Welcome to Handmade Happenings. I'm Marissa. Today I'm making a case for my crochet hooks. This video is going to be a bit different than usual because instead of doing all of my planning before I started filming, I am bringing you along for that step in the process. So this is my box of crochet hooks, and you can see it's not the most organized. It's not really like a problem, it's just that I can't find necessarily the size that I want very easily because obviously in a box it just doesn't hold them in a neat way, and some of these hooks have those handles that, you know, the white lettering just does not show up on this color. So I want to change how I store these, but I don't want one of those holders that has them all open and out because I don't particularly like looking at things that are too cluttered feeling. And what I'm leaning towards is more of one of those crochet hook rolls. And then that way I can either roll it up and put it in a basket with my yarn, or I could possibly even use it to hold everything in place, but still store it in this box. That way it can go back on my shelf. So if you've never seen one of these pouches, they are usually kind of almost like a rectangle. And then they have like a pocket that comes part way up, and it has slots sewn into it. And oftentimes they'll also have kind of like a little flap at the top that folds over and covers like the top part of the hook. And I think that's just to keep them from like falling out if you happen to hold the thing upside down or something. And in the past, when I've done stuff that has these pockets like this and they're sewn kind of flat, I have always ended up making them the wrong width. And I've kind of struggled with that. So I need to figure out what width each slot needs to be per crochet hook. And as I already said, they're in a lot of different sizes, because even between these ergonomic ones that were all in one set, you can see the difference in the width just by holding them next to each other. Now what I have concluded is the best way to figure out the width for each of these slots is to take the item that's going in it, in this case my hook, and measure it around the widest part that's going to be going in the pocket. For me, that's going to be the bottom. So I'm just going to wrap my measuring tape around it. That's about where it is. And then take that measurement and divide it in half. Well, in my case, just fold it in half like this. And it's between 1 1/8 and 1 1/4 inch. I would probably round up to 1 1/4 to get that number. So that's how wide the slot would need to be. So if this is the slot that the hook is going to go into, this measurement right here would need to be 1 1/4. So I need to figure that out for all of these, and rather than try and measure them all because it's not the most precise thing, what I'm going to do is take some scrap fabric and I am just going to sew slots and make them each one bigger by about 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm just going to test all of the hooks until I find the size that each of them needs. So I have sewn all of these sections and I've laid all of my hooks out according to size and wrote everything down over here so that I can note which size pocket each one needs to go in. What I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to slide it in. I need to get it to whatever part it's going to be the widest at, and I think, let's see if I go like, I feel like I need to go higher than that. So yeah, probably up to there. With all of these, it's going to be the bottom piece that's bigger. With these here, it's going to be this wider piece up top. Of course, I did not think to mark the pockets, so I should probably maybe do that. Might do that in a minute. So see, this is, I consider a good fit because it's sliding in and out easily, but not like falling out. So this one's 5/8. So I've gone through and measured all of my hooks and decided which width I need for the pocket for each of them. I've gone ahead and written it all down. A couple here, I wasn't sure which one I wanted to go with, so I wrote down 2. I think I am going to round up only because these hooks have a rubber handle and they don't slide well. So I would rather have the room to get them in than to have trouble with that, because I feel like if I'm having to shove them in, it could wear out the handle over time. So I need to add all of these up to determine the overall width of my piece. So all of the numbers added up came out to 17 5/8 of an inch. To that I need to add seam allowance, which would be at least 1/4 inch on either end. And in fact, I might make that 1/2 inch on either end. So that would be an inch total. So now we're up to 18 5/8 of an inch for the length, this measurement, the long measurement of the rectangle. So this measurement is minimum basically for the pockets. I will probably add more to this because I haven't fully decided if I want to have this roll up or if I want to fold it in thirds and then have like basically this part would get folded in half and then I would have a second flap here that wouldn't have anything on it. So you fold this part over, fold that over, and hook it somehow so that it looks more like a clutch. And also because having it longer than I need gives me room for error. So if I get down to that last one and I was off a little bit, I should still have plenty of room to get the last hook sewn in, as opposed to getting to the end and discovering that I'm like 1/2 inch short. But for now, I'm going to write the down as 18 5/8. Now I need to figure out the height of the roll. And I'm just going to do that by measuring. I believe this is my tallest hook. It is 6 inches, and then I want to add an inch because of seam allowance, and probably another inch because if you think about it, if it's lying flat, the base of the bag's going to have to, like, it's not going to sink all the way into it. I'm going to go with 8.5 inches for the height. So this is the overall measurement of the entire bag. The pockets will be the same length, but the height will be shorter. And for that, I really need to be able to see the range of sizes because this is the smallest. This is, as far as I know, the tallest. And I want it at least up to there. So that's 3.5. We'll go ahead and say 4.5 for the pocket height. So I have my pieces cut out, and I want to go over them real quick because they have changed slightly from what I said in the last segment. That happens a lot. That's why I normally don't show all of the planning, because it changes so much so fast that I always worry that I'm going to forget to cover something and leave out important information. But I've got my fabric cut out. This is the main body of the roll, and there's 2 of them. And so this is the one that I calculated the height based on the height of my hooks, plus an inch for seam allowance, plus some more for, just wiggle room. I don't want it the exact height of the hooks when it's done. So that was the height. The width was calculated by the width of all of the pockets, what they were going to need to be for all of my hooks. And then I added on, again, an inch for seam allowance. And then I added on even more just to give me wiggle room to add more if I need to, and whatever else. I think I tried to add 9 inches, but I cut it out wrong the first time. So I think it's only like 8 inches added on to the width. And I cut 2 of these. So this is the outside. This one will be the inside. This piece here is the pocket, and it was calculated. It's the same width or length as the main piece. And then the height is, I measured where I wanted it to hit on the hook, added 1/2 inch for seam allowance at the bottom, added a little more just to make sure that I definitely get it, because I'm pretty sure that with the hooks sitting in it, it's going to not sit as high as it's measuring. So I added a little for that. And then I doubled it because I am just going to fold this piece in half when I sew it on to the bag. This last piece is the flap that goes at the top. It is the same width or length as the pouch. I think it measures in most spots about 3 inches tall. It was actually cut on an uneven edge, so it's probably not that all the way across. It is sewed currently, and what I will probably do is decide how much I want to hem it after it is sewn into the piece, and I can see kind of where all of the hooks are sitting. Now that the planning is done, it's time for the assembly. One change from the measurements given in the last clip is that I trimmed down the length of the flap piece to be a couple of inches shorter than the length of the main piece. This is because I didn't want it sewn into the side seams. I also sewed the 2 short edges of that piece. I pinned the flap to the top edge of the right side of the inner main piece, making sure to keep it centered so that the edges of the main piece overlapped on either side about the same amount. I pressed the pocket in half and then pinned it to the bottom of the same main piece. Then I basted them into place. The flap is only basted on 1 edge and the pocket was basted on 3 edges. I cut a long piece of purple ribbon, folded it in half, and pinned it about halfway up one of the short sides. And this is just to tie the case closed once it's finished. I placed and pinned the outer main piece on top of the inner piece with the right sides together, and then sewed around all 4 sides, leaving a gap on the short side, the one opposite of where the ribbon was attached. Then I clipped the corners, flipped it right side out, and pressed it. I top stitched around all 4 edges, making sure to close the opening that was used to flip it, and I turned the flap up so that it didn't get caught in the top stitching. Next is marking and sewing the slots. I started on the left side and measured over from the top stitching the amount that I needed for the first slot. I then marked the stitching line with a chalk roller, and I used that as a guide for my stitching. Then I tested to make sure that the hook fit. I did the same for the remaining slots, always measuring from the stitching of the previous one. Okay, so here it is, and it did work, which is actually kind of a surprise to me. I was expecting to run into some more problems as I went along, but they did all fit. Some of them do still seem a little tight, which worries me a little about the handles, just because, again, I don't want them rubbing off, but they do still fit, and I don't think I'm going to be like constantly pulling them in and out, so it shouldn't be a problem, certainly not anytime soon. I did notice that having them in the pockets at the bottom, it obviously, so like if the hook isn't in it, the piece can just lay flat. But when the hook is in it, it draws up the bottom a lot tighter. And as you can see up here, as it does that, it causes puckers or whatever up top, because there's nothing that's causing the top part to pull in like that. So that basically makes the top, in a way, bigger than the bottom, even though it's not. That's what causes all of this. I know what causes it. I don't necessarily know how to fix it or what could be done to make it lay better. As for this flap here, not very helpful. It kind of doesn't want to stay down when rolling up or folding up this piece. So I may eventually end up removing it, just kind of cutting it off. Now the pocket does cover up the size information, which is printed like all the way down at the bottom of the handle, which isn't ideal because I would like to know without having to pull them all out, because that kind of defeats the purpose of what this is for. So what I might do is either find a fabric pen and try writing it, or just do it with a marker. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time for another handmade happening.